One course in particular that I've absolutely loved has been Professor Kenneth Harl's definitive series on the Vikings. I keep going back to this course, and every time I do, I learn something new. Whether you're an expert or a complete beginner, these courses are for you. You can help me out and get yourself some free knowledge by signing up today to a free trial of the Great Courses Plus by clicking on the link in the description below, or by going to thegreatcoursesplus.com/historytime. In early medieval France, the age of the Vikings began slightly later than in Britain, with the first recorded pirates arriving off the coast of Aquitaine in 799. It also ended earlier than in Britain, with most invaders being driven off by the 940s. This is by no means to say that the French got off lightly, however. It was on French soil during that brutal 150-year period, encapsulating the entire 9th century, that some of the largest and most intense of all Viking incursions took place, including at least 3 large-scale sieges of Paris and attacks on nearly every other major population centre and trading community in West Francia. The Viking Age burned brightly in what is now France, and though it is usually said to have ended by the 940s, peace was only achieved by a French king giving away a large chunk of land to a group of particularly dangerous invaders. Though ridiculed at the time, this decision ultimately proved to be the most effective strategy of all.
We found the map!
In just a few decades, the Franco-Scandinavian descendants of those invaders of the early 10th century would adopt Christianity. Within 2 generations, they were speaking French, and perhaps most ominously for their future opponents from northern Britain to the eastern shores of the Mediterranean, they adopted Frankish customs, in particular heavy cavalry and castle building. It was within this precariously placed frontier society, consisting at first of little more than a few determined invaders ruling with an iron fist over a subject population, that the next and even more brutal phase of Northern European warriors would eventually be forged. These warriors were destined to become the most effective fighting force in all of Europe, the masters of lands from Italy to Palestine, and the conquerors of England. The age of the Normans was about to begin.
Sweet.
This is as much the story of those descendants of Norsemen as it is of their founding father, a larger-than-life character and one of the most successful Vikings in history.
A unique!
The warlord from an obscure background who became ancestor to every monarch in Europe. Rollo the Walker. In the year 799, just as the first of many longships began to sail down from the north to lay waste to the shores of western Francia, the veteran Frankish king Charles the Great, better known as Charlemagne, already nearing his 60s and the most powerful European monarch since the fall of the Western Roman Empire, was preparing for the most important moment of his reign. In the year 800, he was symbolically crowned in Rome as the first Holy Roman Emperor, a new title seen by many as being the successor to Rome's imperial legacy. Though in reality, the eastern Byzantine half of the Roman Empire still existed to the east at modern-day Istanbul, as it had for some 500 years, and would continue to do so for much longer. Almost as soon as Charlemagne died in 814, the cracks in his outwardly unassailable realm began to show themselves. Before long, the Carolingian Empire, founded by his ancestors, that he had helped to reach its absolute maximum territorial extent, stretching far into Eastern Europe and deep into the Pyrenees, began to fall apart. In the wake of the Emperor's death, from the Atlantic to the Adriatic, regional strongmen increasingly sought to re-establish or forge anew their own authority. This, coupled with a fairly ineffectual successor in the form of Charles's son, Louis the Pious, who struggled to hold on to the empire against rebellions from within his own family, laid the groundworks for the catastrophic era to come. Perhaps not immediately, but certainly in the long run, the group that most profited from Charlemagne's death were the Scandinavian newcomers from the north. For a couple of decades after 814, Francia's regional defences held out for the most part, with only occasional Viking forays making it past the fortified river defences and well-drilled coast guards that had long patrolled the entrances to the Frankish river systems. By 834, however, Charlemagne's once mighty imperial army, the bane of rulers from the Baltic to the Carpathians, had become a shadow of its former self. When the levies finally broke and the piratical raiders came flooding in, they wouldn't be closed off again for more than 100 years. In 834, a powerful fleet of Scandinavians, possibly led by the semi-legendary sea king Ragnar Lothbrok, swept aside the Frankish border guards who defended the rivers of the northwest, and headed deep inland along the Rhine to attack the trading hub of Dorestad, an integral